Good morning, Kipsters. Happy Thursday. Today is our last day of the week for music. So I wanted to introduce you guys to our new topic today. After this week, we will continue to focus more on the recorder and the playing side of it. But today I wanted to give you an introduction to what the recorder is, the history of it, and show you a couple videos of some people playing it, as well as maybe playing it a little bit myself. You see here, I have my recorder here to help give you a visual aid on exactly what we discuss in this video today. Okay, so again, in this video, you're going to need to be on the Nearpod as well as watching along on the YouTube video so that you guys can get a little bit extra help instead of having to do this Nearpod just by yourself and figuring it out on your own. Okay, so as we've been doing before, get the Nearpod open, get the YouTube video. You don't have to watch the YouTube video. You can just follow along in the Nearpod while I'm talking in the background, and then we will have as much success as we need to get this lesson done. Okay. So thank you again for signing on today. Thank you for getting on your video, watching. I hope you guys enjoy this segment of our music time together. I'm really looking forward to playing recorders with you all. All right. So Rockstar Recorders, recorder history. All right. These are just my notes. We're going to skip past this. If you're following along in the Nearpod, you can just click next twice on the first slide. All right, and you can go ahead and click next on this one as well. So we all should be starting on the slide that says essential question. When you are there, you can go ahead and stop and wait for me to continue. Okay, essential question. What is the recorder and where did it come from? Moving on to the next slide. All right, in this lesson, you will investigate the history of recorders, discover how the recorder produces its sound, and build background knowledge for future recorder lessons. All right, all this will be very helpful to you when we get to actually playing the recorder. Knowing what you're holding in your hand makes you much more efficient at that said thing. Okay, so if I didn't know much about clarinet, I wouldn't be as good at clarinet as I am now. All right, just for you, just the same for you. If you know more about the recorder, you'll be more comfortable holding it in your hand. Moving on to the next slide, let's get started. Next slide. Taking a poll real quick. Have you ever played a musical instrument? Now, for most of you, this is probably a yes, because Mr. Isaac introduced you to bucket drums last year, which is a musical instrument when you start playing music with it. But for some of you, that answer may be no. So you can go ahead and click what you want. Some of you may play violin. Some of you actually sing. But singing is not actually an instrument. It is an instrument in your own body, but it is not an actual instrument. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Once you answer that poll, you can answer it however you would like. Before you learn about the history of the recorder, you'll need to learn some music-related vocabulary. Okay, moving on to the next slide after this specific slide. Our first word, you should be on the slide that says this word. It says Fipple. Everyone say Fipple. All right. Fipple is the mouthpiece of a recorder. So if you're looking at the YouTube video right now, I'm showing the mouthpiece of the recorder. You can actually take this recorder apart. Not all recorders you can take apart, but this one you can. So for this sake, I'm going to take it apart. All right, you can look down here and see this is the mouthpiece right here. The part you put your mouth in and on, and as you can see, there's a hole right here. That is where the air goes. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. All right, but this is the mouthpiece. And as I said, on some of them, you can take it all off, or you can take the mouthpiece off, and some of them you can it's the one whole instrument. All right, I think the ones you got are just the one whole instrument, but that doesn't mean it's a lesser instrument. All right, moving on to the next slide. The ramp is also on the mouthpiece section. So you can see here, there's a hole right here. It's hard to focus this in the camera. There's a hole right here, right? This is the hard edge that air travels through. All right, so air comes out of this, it whistles through, and it helps make the accurate pitch. All right, so you can see here, hard edge that air hits after traveling through the windway, and this is the windway right here. This little small area, that's where the wind goes through. That's the way the wind goes through, and they call it the windway. Next slide. All right, windway. The channeled duct air travels through in the recorder. So you see here, this duct right here goes through, and then there's a hole all the way through the instrument. As you can see here, it's hollow in here. hole all the way through the instrument that helps you play, and the wind goes through all the way. You can see my eye maybe, and there's my nose. The wind goes all the way through the bottom of the bell. This will be called the bell at the bottom of the instrument. Okay. So just a quick preview. I'm going to go back through those real quick. We had the Fipple, which was the mouthpiece of the recorder, the entire mouthpiece. We had the ramp, which was this section. Air travels through here. Air hits after traveling through the windway, the hole. And then we have the windway, which is the actual hole in the mouthpiece that the wind goes through, or the air goes through. Moving on after the slide that says windway, woodwind. All right, so some of you may know woodwind. We learned this word last year when we were talking about instruments. Woodwind is a wind instrument that produces sound by vibration of reeds or passing air across a mouthpiece. So for this instant, this is one of the instruments that passes air across a mouthpiece. But if we were using a clarinet, our clarinet would have a wooden piece on the mouthpiece, and that is a reed. All right, so woodwind instruments use vibration of their instrument to create sound, and it goes through a tube-like substance. And normally they have a wooden piece on their mouthpiece, but not all woodwinds do. A couple of them do not. That's why they call it woodwind. Moving on to the next slide. Time to show what you know from what we just learned here. All right. I believe this is a matching vocabulary. Sorry, this is taking a little bit longer on my end for the Nearpod. Okay. So we have 4 blanks here. I'm going to go through each of these with you slowly but surely. If you guys can figure it out on your own without my help, then go ahead and do it now. But I'm going to just talk through each of these and get them done together. All right, so the first one says, hard edge that air hits after traveling through the windway. So I'm going to just go ahead and say it's not windway because the windway word is actually already in there. So it's not windway. All right. Let's look at woodwind. Woodwind. We talked about woodwind. It's an instrument that produces air with a reed. So we see that the second one says a wind instrument that produces sound by vibration of reeds or passing across a mouthpiece. So I'm going to just go ahead and stick woodwind there because that one, I know that one. All right. That's one that we just read. We just read it, and it literally says a wind instrument. So woodwind, a wind instrument. The definition is in the word is in the actual definition. Okay. Next one says the mouthpiece of a recorder. All right. I could be windway. All right, but we're gonna try a different answer here. The channeled duct air travels through in the recorder mouthpiece. All right. When we think about it, we had the little hole in there, and I don't think that was called the Fipple. I think the actual entire this entire section was called the Fipple, which is a new word to me. I've never really heard that word used to recorder. But I remember Fipple as the mouthpiece because it's such an interesting word. I couldn't forget it. So I'm going to put Fipple as the mouthpiece of a recorder. All right. And then the windway. I'm going to not put it in the one that says travel through the windway because the word is in the definition, which usually doesn't happen. And then the channel duct. So for windway, we put it under the channel duct air travels through in the recorder mouthpiece. If you remember this little piece right here, the channel duct, it goes through and it pushes all the air through the entire instrument. And then the last one, the ramp, the hard edge that air hits after traveling through the windway. All right. So if you're watching the YouTube video, you can see me pointing out all of those things on the actual instrument. If you're following along, hopefully you can understand it on your own. If not, I did give you the answers there. Moving on to the next slide. Let's take a look at some facts about the recorder and its history. So I'm going to read some of these facts to you guys on the next page. You guys can just scroll through it on your own if you want while I read, or you could look at the YouTube video right now while I scroll along. So what is a recorder? On this slide, you'll see that I have pictures of a recorder on here. All right. And there's a few, these are wooden recorders. So these are very nice recorders. The ones we are getting are sort of plastic, but these are the ones that you pay a lot of money for. As you can see, they're made out of wood. Very nice recorders, and I'm sure they sound very great. All right. The recorder, I'm going to read this, just some of this. The recorder is in the woodwind family. It is a flute with a whistle mouthpiece. There are 7 holes and also a thumb hole on the bottom. So you can see there's a thumb hole right here, that little hole right by my finger right there, and then 7 holes on the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the bottom one is 7. Recorders are made in many different sizes according to the vocal ranges. They can be made out of wood, ivory, or most commonly plastic. All right, so most of the recorders that are made today are plastic, especially the ones that are for the children. The recorder was first used in the Middle Ages. The use of the recorder dropped off after the Renaissance and Baroque periods. In the 20th century, use of the recorder began to pick up again as an amateur instrument and also in education. So this instrument is very old. All right, it was used way back in the day, more popularly, but now it is introduced as an instrument that people begin with. People gain interest in playing music with. Okay, so that is the goal here for us, is to get you guys interested in playing instrumental music. All right, let's move down. You can see here a few mouthpieces of the recorder, all different shapes, all different sizes here. Let's look at this. Recorder is held straight down from the player's lips. So you can see if I'm playing it right now, I'm holding it straight down. I'm not holding it like this. I'm not holding it like this. I'm not holding it like this. I'm holding it straight down like this, rather than to the side like a traditional flute. So this is an instrument, a flute instrument, and you could play it like this. But obviously that is not exactly how it's supposed to, because the instrument, there's still some air. You have to like ring your mouth around it, and it just sounds better like this. All right. The player blows into the mouthpiece, and the air travels along a duct called the windway. This whole section right here. When the air leaves the windway, it hits the hard edge called the ramp, which is this part. We just talked about all this, and which causes the air to oscillate with standing waves. Depending on the holes covered, a different note is played, which we'll learn about later. All right. All these famous musicians right here who created music for the recorder: Johann Sebastian Bach, Henry Purcell, George Telemann, Antonio Vivaldi, and George F. Handel. All right. Musical groups like the Beatles, which you may have heard of, also use the recorder in their music, and the recorder has also been used in popular movies such as Lord of the Rings, which is an old-time movie. So not old-time movie, obviously it's a newer movie, but it was set in older age. So it's a very popular sound in these older age movies, as we can see from this slide. Moving on to the next slide. As I just said before, the recorder has 7 finger holes plus another hole on the bottom. We're going to watch a video on how those holes change the sound produced. So when we put our finger on a new hole, a new sound comes out, a new note, which is what we've been learning in the treble clef. A new note is played. Watch this video.
Now the recorder works by blowing into the mouthpiece, and air is blown through a narrow channel here called the windway, down here over another part called the ramp. So the air goes into the windway and out via the ramp, and that sets up changes of pressure inside the recorder tube. And precisely those changes in pressure are what causes the column of air in the tube to vibrate, which makes the sound. Now, the key is, with the recorder, as with many wind instruments, is that by covering the holes along the tube, you can control the length of that vibrating column of air, which effectively controls the note that you produce. So, when all the holes are covered, we have quite a long column of air vibrating. That vibrates slowly and produces a low pitch. And when I have only one hole covered, I have a shorter column of air that vibrates quickly and produces a high pitch. Let's have a look and see.
Moving on. Open-ended question here. Explain what happens to the sound from the recorder when more holes are covered. All right. Explain what happens to the sound from the recorder when more holes are covered. All right. So when more holes are covered on the recorder. All right. Let's think about it for a second. I'm going to play this a little bit for you. So when I'm playing one hole on the recorder covered, two holes, three holes, four, five. When more holes are covered on the recorder, the sound, the note played gets lower. All right. And this is because when you're playing a high pitch, the vibrations are going faster. All right. And so there's more room for vibrations to go up and down because we're not covering these holes. All right. So you can see as I'm playing this, and as I get lower and lower, the vibrations go slower and slower. All right. So when more holes are covered on the recorder, the note played gets lower. The vibrations get shorter as more holes are covered. So if your answer is something like that, you're on the right track. I'm doing it with you so that we can get as accurate as possible when we're playing this. The more holes you cover, the lower the note goes. The less notes you cover, the higher the note is, okay? That's a general rule for the recorder and a general rule for most instruments that have the woodwind. They have the woodwind formula. All right, so once you're done with this, go ahead and submit it and click next. Let's match pictures of recorders. So we're going to match some pictures here. Some of these instruments are not recorders and some of them are. Just to go ahead and play your matching game. I'm going to just do my best here. See if I can find the answers super quick. But you guys can pause your video and try the matching game on your own. This does change every time. So I did have it. But the order of these change every time, which is cool. We don't have to do the same thing over and over again. All right, so once you guys get all the questions done, it's not going to be the same as mine, so you can't even watch me do it. Once you guys get all the matching done, go ahead and move on. If you're not ready, pause the YouTube and then move on when you're ready. All right, so we're going to take our quiz here in a second, and then this will be the end of our recorder lesson, our history lesson. The recorder has been around since the 14th century. Okay, so the 14th century was around 1500. So that was 500 something years ago. A very old instrument, okay? Much older than anyone you know or have ever met. The recorder is a member of the woodwind family and has 7 finger holes and 1 thumb hole. So this is the thumb hole on the back, and these are the 7 finger holes, all right, on the front. The recorder produces sound when air travels through the mouthpiece. So the only way this instrument can play is if you play sound through here. I don't think you can do it this way. All right, it has to go through this piece right here. Otherwise, it won't play. What was something you learned about the recorder today? All right, I learned that the recorder has a piece called the Fipple. Now remember, I did not know that before, so I'm going to be honest and put something I learned about the recorder today. I learned that the recorder has a piece called the Fipple. I also learned that it was created in the 14th century. Now I may have learned that one day, but I did forget that information, so I'll also put that I learned that in here. Go ahead and post what you guys have learned. Take your time. Don't rush this. All right, pause the video if you need more time to type it out, which I'm sure you do because typing isn't as quick as it could be sometimes. All right, and when you're ready, move on to the next slide. Pause the YouTube video if you need to. Otherwise, just type in what you need there and move on when you're ready. All right, time to show what you know. All right, so go ahead and unpause when you're ready with the video. And when you are finished with your collaboration board, go ahead and finish the quiz. I'm going to help out a little bit while this happens. What family is the recorder part of for question 1 on this quiz? All right, so we have 4 families here, all the family instruments, all the instrument families: woodwind, brass, percussion, strings. I think we know this. I'm not even going to show you the answer. All right, I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Again, pause me if you're not ready. If you know the answer, submit it and move on now. Sound is produced by air traveling over the, is it finger holes? Is it Fipple? Is it the windway? Or is it the ramp? All right, so our finger holes here. Remember these holes that that we put our fingers on. Sound is produced when we put our fingers on this, but not because of that. All right, that's just a way to change the sound. All right, our Fipple is the actual mouthpiece of the instrument. All right, so air is not traveling over the mouthpiece. Air is traveling into the mouthpiece. All right, so I don't think it's Fipple. The windway is the actual hole that we put the air through, and then it goes all the way down. So I don't think air is traveling over that either. I think air is traveling over this ramp. As you can see here, maybe in the video, you can see air travels out and over this part because it's kind of ramped in there. So I think our answer here is going to be ramp. All right, but I'm not gonna answer it again. I just wanted to give you a hint. Maybe you knew it before I gave you the hint, but I think our answer here is D, or ramp, whatever it says on your screen. As more holes are covered, the sound the recorder produces becomes. So we just did this in our a question, our guided question there. As more holes are covered, the sound of the recorder becomes louder. Let's try that. No, becomes lower. That could be right. Becomes higher. I think it becomes higher. It becomes softer. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do that. So I think the answer here is pretty obvious. It doesn't get louder unless I make it get louder. It doesn't get softer unless I make it get softer. And it definitely doesn't get higher unless I take my fingers off more. So I think our answer here is going to be very obvious, lower, as we just talked about. So go ahead and put lower if you have that already. The recorder has been used since the 14th century. I think we just talked about it. And I just said that it was one of the questions I didn't remember. All right, go ahead and pick your answer there, true or false. Moving on to the next one. How many finger holes does the recorder have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, once you've figured out that answer, go ahead and press your answer, submit, and you guys should be good to go on this one. All right. Moving on to the last slide here, we have an open-ended question. What is one fact or thing you remember from today's lesson? I'm going to put the recorder has a piece called the Fipple. Mr. Isaac learned that today, and I'm going to always remember that. All right. Once you guys are done with your open-ended question, you are good with this lesson. Again, this lesson is essentially for you guys to get prepared to play your recorders. The more you know about your instrument that you're holding in your hand, the better I believe you will be the better I believe you will be at the instrument you are learning about. Okay, so take this seriously. Remember the lessons you have learned from the previous weeks about recording and playing on your playing notes on the staff or reading notes on the staff, so that when we have to read notes on the staff, we won't be so easily confused, because it does get confusing when you introduce actual playing notes. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are ready to play your recorders when the day comes, which is coming very soon. As always, Mr. Isaac has 3 words for you. You are kind, you are smart, you are important. I look forward to seeing you guys so soon. Until then, have an awesome day and have an awesome weekend.